Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David. If you didn't know, well, now you know. Today, I'm with my boy, Kyle Aaron. We share a name, so you know this one's about to be special. Kyle and Kyle. Kyle Aaron, Kyle David. We finally linked up. I had lunch with you a couple weeks back and just connected on a real level. Dope, dude. I'm excited to get into this, but I won't take up too much time. Kyle, thanks for being here, first of all, man.
Yeah, man, it's a privilege, Kyle.
Come
We
on.
have more in common than just our first names,
That's a
as
fact.
I'm sure we'll get into over the next, however many minutes on this podcast.
That's a fact. Well, bro, I'm gonna kind of hand the mic to you. Give us, like I said, like the 5-7 minute rundown of like who you are, where'd you come from, how'd you get here, who are
Yep.
you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I was born actually in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and even the way I tell my story is the Lord was like that psalm of where the Lord knits us together in our mother's womb. That's like actually my life because my mom she didn't know she was pregnant until she went into labor,
Wow.
and I was born healthy, um, and it's honestly a praise to the Lord for that. And so I was born in Colorado, and we ended up moving out to California when I was about 4. Grew up there, and grew up in a time where it still is like when your first instinct in trying to find community was to go to a church, and so that's where I met a lot of my childhood friends. But church was not, and the Lord was not what defined my life really for the first 18, 19 years of my life. It was just other people's acceptance. Like
Mm,
I was living to make other people happy, and that made me happy. And for short spurts of times, and that played itself out through me playing sports, getting really good grades in school, and trying to pursue just a whole bunch of other things that I liked and I enjoyed and I was good at. But I think at the end of the day, my ultimate end was other people's approval.
mm,
And so everything I did was a means to that end. and and that ended up actually leading me to get to San Diego State. Got to San Diego State in 2014, and I was just there literally with the same MO. Just wanted people to like me. And San Diego State, it's an awesome school. They do a lot of really cool things, and so I just threw myself at everything that San Diego State had to offer. And as I was doing that, I ended up going to a few student organization meetings. And as we're in those meetings, a guy stood up and was like, "Hey, we want to feed y'all dinner and we want to talk a little bit about Jesus." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I looked at my friends and they're like, I was like, "Man, y'all going to this?" And I'm like, nah. But it was crazy because I didn't end up going. But then a couple weeks later, we're playing intramural football, and we beat a team. And the captain from that team comes up to me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, have you heard of these house dinners that we're doing?" And I was like, "What the heck?" Yeah. And he was like, "Man, you should pull up." And I was like, "Okay." End up going. And for the first time that I can consciously remember in my life, I got to hear that we could have a relationship with the God of the universe, not based on our own works, but based on the works of Jesus. And that was mind blowing to me because up until that point, like I said, everything was on me. It's like everything that I do, everything that I earn, everything I obtain is all based on what I do in my works. And so to hear that I can have a relationship with the guy, I mean, I'm in San Diego, you know what I mean? And so it's like I'm getting to see the ocean, I'm getting to see beautiful sunsets, sunrises, beautiful people.
mhm.
And I'm like, man, the guy who created all of these things wants a relationship with me, and he's made a way for that to happen. That was intriguing to say the least.
Mm.
And so over the course of my freshman year of college, I got to meet up with a guy who's on staff with a ministry, and we just read the Bible together every week. And as that process happened, God began to do a work in my heart, and God ended up saving me the summer of 2015, and that was when I became a
Wow.
Christian, and that changed the trajectory of my life forever because no longer was I living for the approval of others. I was living out of the approval of my creator.
So good.
And that changed everything. It changed the way what I wanted to do with my life, changed the way I wanted to make friends, changed the girl and women that I wanted to date. Ended up dating a girl, beautiful woman, and we ended up getting married
Come on.
2018, and I married up in every area that I could, and we're just getting now. I'm getting to be on staff with the college ministry. I'm getting to build laborers on the college campus to see the world changed. And we have a little daughter, She's about a year old, and it's a joy, man. So that's a little bit of my story. Really just the story of God pursuing me even before I was born, and calling me to himself. And now I'm just getting to enjoy him and worship. So
Come on.
that's
Oh,
my
you get
life.
me excited. You have such a great story. I want to double click into something though. I didn't know this, and this is very curious to me. You said your
Yep.
mother did not know she was pregnant until
That-
she had you?
That's right, man. That's right. So
How's
yeah,
that
it was
work?
great. Well, did you ever growing up, did you ever hear the TV show I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant?
No.
So it's an MTV show. You should look it up. But
Of
basically it's
course,
like
MTV
it
had that.
yeah, it's kind of a rare thing, but it's not like
Uh-huh.
it obviously, it's like most people know they're pregnant when they have a baby inside of them, but
Yeah.
I was actually growing kind of closer to my mom's back
Oh,
rather than in the front.
yeah.
And so as I was growing more towards her back, that caused her like basically to be a hidden pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom,
Dang.
she went into a lot of pain the day I was born. And she was kind of coming off a pretty traumatic thing that happened in her life a month
Mm-hmm.
prior to my birth. And so she thought it was just something that was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But she ended up getting to the doctors, and the doctor's like, "Hey, you're having a baby." Uh,
Dang.
the hospital that I was at actually didn't have like an OBGYN. They didn't have that department at the because my mom didn't know she was pregnant. So
Yeah.
they just got her to the closest hospital. And they're like, all right, we're gonna transport you. But my grandma, she was like, hey, no, you make sure my daughter's safe. So you're not taking her anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to fly, like basically bring an OBGYN in, and
Dang.
then ended up being born, man. And so
Bro, that's
uh
wild.
yeah, so it was pretty crazy just even coming into the world. That was that
That
was
is
that was
wild.
yeah.
It
So
makes sense. I mean, that does make sense how you were not protruding out front because you were coming in the back. Huh, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
I want to
yeah, man.
so and then we're just gonna flow with this. So
Yeah.
when you were going to San Diego State at the beginning, you were not a believer, correct?
No, it wasn't a Christian. Mm-mm.
Had you ever been exposed to Christianity?
Yeah, I think I said like when we moved to California from Colorado, back then it was
Mhm.
early 2000s. It was still the way you found community. Like there wasn't CrossFit, there
Oh,
wasn't
right.
big. You know what I mean? I was too young for youth sports at the time, so it
Mhm.
was like at that time, and there, Facebook wasn't a thing yet. And so it was like to find friends. I think most adults would be like, "Hey, I'm going to find friends by going to church."
Mhm.
And so my parents they ended up finding a local church to be
All
a part
right.
of. And so I had heard about God, been exposed to the Bible, but it's shortly. I mean, by the time I got to middle school, like sports ran our life, so
Mhm.
that's all we did. And so for me, the way I viewed God was that he was kind of like a drill sergeant, genie in the bottle.
Mm.
So it was like he was a drill sergeant, and then I had to follow all these rules that I didn't want to follow. So I was
Right.
like, okay, I'm off there. But he was a genie in a bottle, so he could give me whatever I wanted.
Mhm.
So it was like, man, if there was a test I hadn't studied for, uh, God, I really need an A. Or if I was about to play a sport, it was like, God, please don't let me hurt my ACL. Like, I don't want to get injured. That was my view of God.
Mm.
And so yeah, it was kind of that was my exposure. And the church I went to, even now as I look back on my life, I mean, there was a lot of really good gospel seeds that were planted.
Mhm.
That now I'm kind of like more reaping off of the now. But at
Mhm.
the time, it was just, I was blinded, had eyes but couldn't see, and ears but couldn't hear,
Mhm.
and my heart was stone. So
Mhm.
that was kind
Bro,
of that.
that what you said there about the seeds being planted, that's super encouraging because I
Mm,
think a lot of times Christians or churches, my dad's a pastor, pastors can feel like, man, what I'm doing isn't working, right? Like
mhm,
I have conversations
mhm.
with my dad frequently where there's times where he's like, I feel like I'm feeding the flock, but
Yeah,
I don't know if they're eating what I'm feeding, right? I don't know
yeah,
if it's actually being applied daily or if they're just showing back up every 6 days.
yep, yep,
But that's encouraging. I'm actually going to share that with him, that like you never
yeah,
know what the seeds are going to do down the road when someone, again, right? Like you plant the seeds, God waters them, and he'll bring people
yep.
into your life to be the sunlight, to be the water,
That's
to
right.
grow those seeds. That's super encouraging to hear. I think people need to hear that more. It's cool that you have that awareness too, that there were seeds being planted way back.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, we get to read in the scriptures, whether it's in Ephesians, Rome, or like the whole New Testament. It's kind of talking about before the foundation of the earth, God chose us. Like we have a big God, and when He wants us, He's gonna get us. And He pursues us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like we're not on the same playing field as God. God's not like us. He's different than us. And so our perspective is way different than the Lord. And so it's just been cool to be able to look back like, man, God, you're so good. Even when I was not, I wanted nothing to do with you. You still were just, all right. You're my kid. I love you. I'm coming after you. And kind of how in a good, I think, healthy home, that's how parents are. They continue to pursue their kids in a way that models the way that God pursues His children.
Right. Unconditional.
That's right.
Bro, I always think for my own story, like I think back to when, I think a little bit of my story, and a lot of the people that listen to, I went rogue, right? Pastor's kid went rogue at 18, drugs, sex, all of it, partying, and wanted to live my own life. My parents never stopped pursuing me, always with love, with challenge, but never stopped pursuing me. And it's honestly, it's helped me understand the love of God a lot, because I processed with my dad and been able to encourage him and be like, hey, you've helped me see the love of Christ by the way that you didn't give up on me. And it's because he loves the Lord. And so he tried to replicate that. And it's just like, that's what it is, right? It's not, and it's not perfection. My dad's not perfect, right?
That's right.
But he pursued me and never quit. And so that's why I'm alive today, right? Because of God's goodness in other people. Now I'm curious, like, when this guy is like, hey, we're gonna go talk about Jesus, and have you heard of it? And you're like, yeah, sure. Like, were you opposed to that? Or it sounds like you weren't, because you kind of had was your desire at first like, I'm gonna go hear about Jesus, or you're like, there's free food, I'm in college?
Free food. And I had heard multiple people invited me. And so then that was kind of the big thing, is like there were multiple people inviting me, and I mean, I was away from home for about a month, I think almost a month at that point. And so it was like, man, I haven't had a home cooked meal in a while. And so the food was the bait. And then Jesus was the hook. So so yeah. So that's how that happened.
They hooked you. Now you're a pretty good athlete, right? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was okay. The school I went to had a lot of really good athletes, so I kind of grew up around a lot of D1 guys. And so for me, I was like, I'm okay. So I mean, I played sports, played football, basketball, baseball, dropped baseball once I got to high school. But then, I got to play, started, but I wasn't good enough to go to a big school. And that's why I really wanted to go to a big school my whole life. And so ended up being like, hey, I have good grades, so I'm going to use those grades to go down to San Diego State. And so, but I still play basketball today. I'm still on the intramural football field and intramural basketball court with college students every year. And
just balling them up.
Trying.
Why did you decide, like, I'm going to commit my life to serving college kids? Like, you could still be a believer and go do anything, right? And like,
absolutely.
First of all, I have two questions there. Why did you choose, like, I'm gonna commit my life to serving college kids, at least in this season? And then two, was it hard when you look out in the world and you're like, there's so many enticing things, right? Like, I could be a believer and still go make a bunch of money or build a business. And you know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
Was that tough?
So first, why college students? I think that then leads into the second question. I think college students today are the leaders of our world tomorrow.
That's a fact.
And so, I mean, the people who are in college now, those people are going to be the teachers in 5 years. Those people are going to be the lawyers, the doctors, the business owners, the business leaders, the engineers. project managers, all those things like that.
Yeah.
That 18 to 25 range. I mean, you know, anyone who's lived past 18, you know, those 4 to 7 years of your life are some of the most transformational times in your life. Regardless of what you're pursuing or what you're trying to do, that you're so much development happens there. And so why college students? I just think that's the reason. I was like, man, we just get to interact with college students at such a critical time in their life. And then that leads, I think, to the second one. Was it hard? Man, honestly, I think I was just so convinced of this vision, and I wanted this. I still to this day, I want to see God change. I want to see the world renewed. I mean, I want to see the kingdom on earth as is in heaven, and I do believe that as we get to invest in a few, many people will be impacted for the sake of the gospel. And I've always had a desire to teach and coach and do, like, I got involved in that type of stuff when I was in middle school, high school age. And and so that's kind of just been part of my passions my whole life. And so, like, man, if I could coach and equip and teach college students, kind of give them the answer, helps tell them the story and help them be a part of this story that God's writing, then they're going to go out and there's going to be, you know what I mean? Like there's just going to be there's going to be a lot of people who are out there living for God's glory. And so it wasn't, I think I was just so laser focused when I was 22, really probably 20, 21, 22. I was like, man, this is what I want to do. And I don't want to do anything else except invest in the lives of college students and launch them out into the world and just get to see God's glory multiplied and everywhere they're going. And so that's kind of why, and why college students, and what kind of made me, or was it hard? Not really.
You were honed in.
Yeah. That's kind of my personality. Like when I get focused in on something, like we just built a pizza oven in our backyard.
Nice.
And it was like, dude, I want to do this. So whatever it takes, we're going to make it happen. And so my uncle flew out, we started working, cut a tree down, laid some concrete, and then started building the pizza oven. So
we're doing the whole thing. Chop the trees down, tell the neighbors it's on.
Yeah. We got somebody to cut the tree down because it was kind of tall, fair. But then everything else, I mean, we were out there, man, and it was, and we're in that Texas heat. So
yeah.
So anyways,
talk about it. Let's go.
Yeah,
bro. So what, I guess I would ask this, what are you seeing? Like, you're on the front lines, right? You're with these people. I think about that all the time, right? That wasn't my call, but I do think a lot about the next generation and even the kids that are in junior high school. Like they're our future leaders, our lifetime, we're going to be led by these people, right?
Yep, that's right.
What are you seeing out there that you're like, man, this is exciting, but also what are you seeing that you're like, man, the enemy is having a heyday here with these kids?
Yeah, first what's exciting, these people they're just really good learners. I mean, think about it. It's like I have a friend, he's a student right now, and it's like he ended up he started learning how to take videos of Call of Duty, and like people playing Call of Duty and doing that, learned how to do that, got really good at it, and is now he got hired by one of the best video game teams in the country. And so and is now getting to travel with that video game team all over whenever they have like tournaments and stuff like that. He gets invited to go with them. And so you think about it, it's like he learned that. Like he was hungry to learn, he wanted to learn it, and all he's learning that in his off time. Like he's still going to school, he's getting a degree, he's doing awesome things. I think one thing is that students are like the college students today, middle school, like they're learning at such a fast pace. And I think what's also exciting is students, like people today just really have a real deep burden for the marginalized and the people who maybe have less than them. Like there's just a part of that's because they've been exposed to that from just an early age. They've been exposed to the iPhone and social media and the globalization of the world, that they can see what's going on in our world, and they can see the people hurting and the people, who don't have what they have, and they want to help them. And I think, so I think that's the big thing. And so those are two things. They're learners, and they really care for other people in a cool way. And then where I think that the enemy is kind of maybe getting his way for a temporary time, because we know it's not forever, is he like the idea of identity, and where people are, like people just, they're trying to, we were talking about it in church the other day, but like people are trying to earn their identity. They're trying to make it known who they are as a way to earn it. And so they and that idea even, and I think also clouding, so identity, and then also clouding the Christian influence that has been on the Western world. So like I said, like that care for other people is like, we take that, I think in a lot of ways we take that for granted in 2022. Whereas if you go back a few hundred years, and maybe even early, like after that, you know what I mean, is like, it was normal for homeless people to just not be taken care of. It was normal for orphans to just be left out. It was normal for widows and for single moms to just not be cared for. Like that was a normal aspect of society. But now what we're seeing is this real care, and I think a right care for the equality of all people. But we're not attributing that to the Christian faith and how that has literally shaped generations. But that's clouded. People aren't aware of that for many reasons. You know what I mean? I think we could that could probably be a whole podcast, and maybe get some historian to come on later. But that, because of certain things that we have done as a church, people, that's been clouded. And so I think in some ways, the enemy Satan is using that for the world's advantage of, like, hey, no, don't think that Christians have had a big influence. Just look at the Christians on the news and on your Twitter feeds and the thing, you know what I mean? And
totally.
And so it's like, and let's wipe out 2,000 years of church history, and just let's just look at the last 100 years of Christianity lived in the United States of America. Not even global. You know what I mean? It's like, let's focus on this one little piece of the church and wipe out everything else.
Right.
And so I think that's something students don't know. Like they're not. And for what's interesting is college students today are not coming into college with a paradigm. They're not living out their story with a paradigm thinking about God. They might be thinking about spirituality, like, oh, something's out there, and that's probably on a good day. But for the most part, it's like people do not, they're not being exposed to Christianity. They're not being exposed to the scriptures. And I could tell you some, like, some people are thinking that Moses is a Greek god, or they're thinking about, and John, they're thinking about, and that's like real life, man. That's on the college campus. And then, or like when you're reading John 1, they're asking, when we're talking about the word, and the word became flesh, man, who you talking about there? Like, I've had people say, oh, are we talking about the devil? Like that's they don't even have a paradigm for the scriptures, and that's new. I think when you and I were probably growing up and coming up to be 18, it's like you could assume the person next to you had some exposure to the Bible, but that's not the case. Like, you can't assume that anymore. So that's interesting.
I think that's cool, though. I think to go back to the positive stuff about like them being learners, and I totally agree. Like, I've seen a generation that really has deep hearts for each other, which is encouraging, because it's like it's the pendulum swing, right? One generation goes way this way, and the next generation goes way this way. I think these past generations have got so focused on the American dream and individualism that it's cool to see people being like, no, we need to live in community. People matter. Other people matter. The downtrodden people matter. The people in need matter. This guy with the sign matters.
Right? That's right. That's
And
right.
it makes sense that they're all learners. Do you think it's because there's so much information now in their fingertips?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, people are exposed to more information on a daily basis than they know what to do with. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, which most people probably aren't even on Facebook anymore, but it's like there's so much just that's just being thrown at them
Mhm.
that they have to learn at a very fast pace.
Yeah,
And the stuff that's being thrown at them is 15-second little snippets of stuff.
yeah,
So, and then we will lead you to YouTube, which
yeah,
is, you know what I mean, if you
yeah.
wanted to learn more.
Mhm,
So yeah, it's like they're being exposed to more,
mhm,
and there more information is being thrown at them, and that therefore they're forced to adapt.
mhm. Yeah,
Yep.
it's great. It's like the blessing and the curse of social media or the internet. It's like if you
Yeah.
use it right, it's a powerful tool, and if
That's
used
right.
incorrectly, still a powerful tool,
That's right. That's
right?
right. That's right, man. Yes, sir.
What do you think
Yep.
about, like, you kind of mentioned a little bit, like the role of the church or where we've missed it? As me and my dad talk about this a lot. I told you he's a
Mm,
pastor, um,
yep.
and he's really trying to shift his paradigm too, being like, are we discipling people well? Are we equipping
Hmm.
people well to live it out, or are we just
Hmm.
feeding people encouragement every 6 days? What are your thoughts on that? I'll be curious to hear what you think about that.
Yeah. I think yeah, like I have an interesting view because like I said, I grew up a little bit in the church and went away from the
Mhm.
church, then got involved with a pretty discipleship focused like that's what our ministry focuses in on
Right.
is discipleship, life on life, equip people to do that.
Hmm.
But it's interesting now that I've met some more people who have grown up in the church, and even as I've like been able to take some seminary classes, just learning. I think um, where what's begun to happen, at least in America, is a big reliance on the Sunday gathering,
Hmm.
which is it's crucial, right,
Right.
to a believer's life, is to gather with other believers, be reminded of who we are, whose we
Hmm.
are, where we're going. We need that.
Hmm.
But that's kind of been the primary focus,
Hmm.
which I think in some ways goes back to the second great awakening in the States of you go and hear a preacher preach, and you're just hearing him proclaim the word, and in some ways it's we've just become a little bit stagnant, I think, as a church, because it's been really cool the way God's raised up some really gifted speakers,
Hmm.
and their ability to exhort the God's people and to pull out things from the scriptures has been really cool. But in the same way, when you have that reliance on one person, then it is kind of that, hey man, instead of being like, hey, can I share something with you about Jesus? It's,
Hmm.
dude, you really got to come to my church and hear my pastor. He's so gifted, he's amazing, and
Hmm.
which isn't wrong, but you know what I mean. They're not wrong in saying that,
Right.
but it's like when you're not feeling equipped to be able the to be the church,
Hmm.
uh, then that can we can run into some problems there.
Hmm.
Um, and I think in some ways, again, this is probably just my seminary back like experience. I think we've kind of um, not included as much church history in our churches as we can. I
Hmm.
think we've kind of gotten away from that, and in doing so, it's kind of hollowed out our faith a little bit.
Hmm.
And in some way, even the way that we were talking earlier with this generation, focusing in on this current moment we're in with the church, at least in the last 200 years since
Hmm.
America, came to be.
Hmm.
When that's your only scope of church history, you're gonna have a lot of blind
Yeah.
spots. You know what I
Tons.
mean?
Totally.
You're gonna miss a lot.
Hmm.
And then equal in you're relying on a speaker rather than the word of God. That also is gonna stunt your growth as a believer. So
Totally.
yeah, I think those are some ways that
Hmm.
we're that reliance on the speaker, which again we kind of inherited with this generation. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It led to that. It wasn't like we're the first people to do that.
Right.
But then also um, kind of cutting out a lot of church history, not
Hmm.
relying on that, uh, is we're like, hey, let's move away from that and let's be relevant.
Hmm.
Let's be relevant for our current culture. Who cares about the old stuff? That's just old stuff. We don't need it.
Hmm.
Um, that I think in some ways that hollows out our faith. So
Totally agree.
yeah.
Yeah. My dad is focused a lot on being involved in disciple making movements. You've heard of disciple
Hmm.
making movements. They're happening all over the
Yeah.
world. It's not just
Yep.
like you said, it's not America. They're actually
Yeah.
crushing it in other countries. And so, like
That's
you
right.
said,
That's right.
disciple making, we think like America's the hub of Christianity, which is not
Yeah.
accurate. But
Yep.
he's like all the people he's talking to in like a lot of these missions organizations and overseas orgs.
Hmm.
Disciple making is actually going to be coming to America because they're already doing it really well in other countries where they are forced to, or
That's
that's
right.
the church. There's not tabernacles or buildings every corner you can just go visit. It's like, yo, we
That's
gotta,
right.
like you said, life on life here. Like in
Yep.
Iran, for example, I have a friend who's got a heart for Iran, and so she
Okay.
knows a lot of people over there in the
Yep.
underground church, right? Like the real
Yeah.
church.
That's right.
Life
That's
on
right.
life, 10 people in a
Yes.
house, eating meals
Yep.
together,
Yep.
reading the scripture. What does this say? How do we live it out? How do we get other people involved? And
Yep.
like that's
Yep.
it's and again, like you said, it's not wrong for us to have Sunday gatherings, but
Yeah.
we can't forget that, like, if we're not discipling people and training them up in the way that they're supposed to go according to what the Bible tells us how to live a godly life, well, then
Yep.
we really we're doing people a big disservice, right? We're giving them
Yeah.
like a piece of the pie and not being like, well, there's actually a whole pie here, right? Like you can
Yeah.
have the whole
Yeah.
thing. We're
That's
just
right.
feeding them
That's right.
slivers of it, which I don't
Yeah.
think is, I do think also the church in America tends to also attack itself a lot too. They're like,
Yeah. That's right.
whether it's denominational, horizontally, or
Yeah.
people are just like, we're doing a terrible job, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but like let's acknowledge the good and work on the bad. And like when we just
That's
attack,
right.
like we're attacking the bride of Christ, and that's I
That's right.
don't think that's the goal either,
Mm-mm.
right?
Mm-mm.
Like
No. Yeah.
we're all flawed humans. Let's figure it out and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. You're hitting on something, man. Like the unity that Jesus prays for his
Mm,
people. I pray that they may be one as we are one, which
mhm.
staggering passage. We don't need to get into it. Like that the Father, Son, Spirit dynamics, like gosh dang, we have an awesome God. But it's like the unity in the American church, it's really sad.
Yeah.
To beat up on whether it's based on denominational views or different things. It's like, man, like and I think what's cool, what's the opportunity that we have in our culture moment is, as we're not being persecuted in the way that people are being persecuted around the world.
Not even
Like
close.
even though some people are, oh, persecution is coming, it's like, dude,
We're not
we're
even close.
you and I are having a loud conversation. It's about to get published on the
Yeah.
internet. I'm not worried.
No, we're fine.
But it's like, I think as maybe the Christian worldview gets pushed more out, into the sideline of American culture, I think the opportunity we have as a church is we're going to have to link arms with people who just believe in Jesus. It's like, man,
Mhm.
you believe in Jesus? You believe that God is one, three persons, that, you know what I mean? It's like Father, Son, Spirit. It's like, let's gather on that,
Yeah.
like what they've had to do and where people are continuing to do around the world.
Mhm.
And let's throw out all this other denominational with important conversations. It's not that they're not important,
Yep.
but they're secondary matters. And I
Mhm.
think as those secondary matters, we see how secondary they are,
Mhm.
we're going to be able to come together with the primary stuff. And that's just, I think we have an opportunity as a church here in America to take advantage of that.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So I go to Watermark Community Church here in Dallas.
Yep.
But they have an institute program. It's like a seminary program.
Yep.
But one of the things they teach, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's basically they draw two circles, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
here are the primary things that the Bible says.
Yes.
There's no really questioning it. This is primary. And then
Yep.
in the other circle is like, these are things that we should discuss, but they're
Yep.
not primary to our faith. Like,
Yep.
right? They're not core to the faith or primary to
Yep.
the faith.
Yep.
And they're not things we should divide upon. We can
Yeah.
disagree respectfully, and it doesn't
That's right.
matter. Like you said, we can
That's
still
right.
link arms and move forward and
That's right.
disagree on secondary items.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think that's where I think also because of our sameness, our unity within the diversity of the church, our unity in Christ, like that's going to be a witness to a watching world, because whether you're on social media or you watch the news or you watch TV, whatever you're watching, the idea that you can disagree with someone and still be friends, that is a foreign concept.
Yeah.
to a lot of people. But as Christians, I think we should be able to, even though we might like what you're talking about, in the outer circle,
Mhm.
we disagree on that thing. But the fact that we agree on these central key things that the Bible talks about
Mhm.
and says very clearly, if we can disagree, but we're still brothers and sisters. And it's like, man, that's a witness. It's like, doesn't matter, you know what I mean? And so
Yep.
that, I think that we have an opportunity there as a church as well to be able to
Totally
do that.
agree. Totally
hmm
agree.
hmm
Bro, that's probably a good place to wrap this up. That's huge. I love that. Like, I'm glad we ended there with like, yeah, unity. Like,
Yeah.
we like you said, I like the word you use. It's an opportunity, right? Like
hmm
we have an
hmm
opportunity, and to that opportunity involves like putting aside our own desires, right? The desires of
Yes,
the flesh to be right, to be correct, to be the one that leads. And no.
that's
Like we
right.
have an opportunity to be humble and to put aside differences and just in culture as well and be like,
That's
all
right.
right, I'm going to be secondary. I'll serve
Yep.
you by not fighting with you, even though I think I'm
Yep.
right.
Yep. Yeah, man. I think even as you say that is like we're modeling after our God,
Mm.
right? Like our God is three persons, one God, Father, Son, Spirit. Is like that's what Paul's talking about in Philippians 2. Like Jesus, who is the eternal Son and put on flesh, he did not count equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied
Yeah.
himself and,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean, and was obedient even to the point of death,
Yep.
so that he could. And then Jesus is the one who's highly exalted.
Yeah.
He's the one who's gonna be. He's the Lamb.
Yeah.
And now we have the Spirit who's now dwelling in all believers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so even in our God, that's what the scriptures are very clear about. And that's what the church throughout history has been just focusing, is our triune God.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads us into being able to be united, even as a diverse people. And I'm not just talking about ethnicity. I'm talking
Yeah.
about diversity in so many aspects. And but
Mm-hmm.
in that diversity, we're united.
Yep.
Just the way that our God is diverse, and Father, Son, Spirit, they're three beings. One as like just let your mind just be blown by that. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it's like that's our God. And we as the church are the visible, we're making God visible in our world. And
Yep.
so
Talk about it.
anyways, yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, you seem like you could probably preach a few sermons here if we let you.
Yeah, man. That's why I'm like, man, these are probably full podcasts. So,
No, this
and
is
we're
great.
just dropping big
Hey,
topics. But
God willing, this thing will be around as long as me. So there's plenty more
yeah,
conversations to be had.
that's right. That's right, man. We'll make it happen.
Come on. Bro, any
So
last words or maybe this is a good last question, like encouragement for any people that are listening that are of that 18 to 25 younger age and are going through just the things that of the world that we live in. Any maybe
yeah,
last encouraging words?
yeah. I think an encouragement for 18 to 22-year-olds honestly would be that there's a God who created you for him with purpose. And he created you intimately. He knows the numbers of hairs on your head. He knows the numbers of your days. He knew you before he created all things. And he created you to know him, and to make him known.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gives you so much. That just gives you so much in that one little sentence, that we have a God who created you to know him, and to know others, make him
Mm-hmm.
known to others. And that's huge, because
Mm-hmm.
that gives you identity, that gives you purpose, that gives you significance. And I think that's what 18 to 22-year-olds, that's what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know who you are, whose you are, why you're here, and what you're supposed to do. And the God of the universe says, I made you to know me, and I made you to make me known. And as if we can walk in that, there's just so much rest and honestly freedom, in that, and in knowing the God who made us. So
That's huge.
yeah,
So,
boom, mic drop.
bro, thanks for being on. Thanks for connecting. This
Yeah,
is a cool connection. It'll be interesting to see where our friendship goes in the coming days.
yeah, I'm excited, Kyle. I
Same.
appreciate you, man.
Always, bro. You too. All right.
All right,
This has been another episode Inside the Mirror. Kyle and Kyle. This is all you get for now. We're out of here. Have a great night. Adios. Later, bro.
peace. All righty, thanks, Kyle.